Recommendation 18. Create agency. Improve safety and support for children at risk. The Commission recommends that the Youth Justice Board, YJB, working with partners across government with expertise in child criminal exploitation, develops a digital solution that can be accessed and used by children and young people before or at the point of crisis. The government will be required to secure and deploy additional resourcing to the YJB to ensure that the YJB is appropriately resourced to deliver and implement this recommendation. The digital solution, which for example may take the form of a mobile application, text line or chatbot, will act as an entry point to signpost and refer those at risk of or already experiencing criminal exploitation to appropriate local organisations who can support them. The services will be driven and implemented at a local level, for example through the youth offending teams. This recommendation will help empower young people with the agency and ability to escape criminal behaviours and exploitation without the need to go to the police. The solution, based on existing technology innovations, will need to reach young people at critical points in their journey, intervening at an early stage for those at risk of criminal exploitation and preventing those already in the criminal justice system from being drawn deeper into criminality. Reducing the harm caused by low-level drug crime. One of the themes from the Lammy Review, which the Commission has aimed to build on, includes the diversion of low-level drug offences outside of the criminal justice system. For England and Wales in 2019 to 2020, 63% of reasonable ground stop and searches were conducted to find drugs. In 2019, possession of cannabis was the most common drug offence for black people, and the second most common for all other ethnic groups. Class B drug offences accounted for nearly half of prosecutions for almost all ethnic groups. 49% of white defendants and 48% of defendants from black, Asian and mixed ethnic groups. In the youth justice estate, in the year ending March 2020, 16% of black and Asian children, 13% of mixed or other ethnic groups, and 8% of white children in youth custody had committed drug offences. The Commission found gaps in research and understanding of the overall prevalence of illegal drug use by ethnicity. However, in England, for pupils aged 11 to 15 in 2018, 17% said they'd taken drugs in the last year. When looking at ethnicity, Asian pupils were less likely than any other ethnic group to have taken drugs in the last year, at 13%, compared with 23% of mixed ethnicity pupils, 18% of black pupils, and 17% of white pupils. Of the drugs taken, cannabis is the drug that pupils were most likely to have taken in the last year, with 8% saying that they had done so. The statistics also showed that of pupils who had taken drugs, 42% said that their early experience of drug use involved cannabis. With over 2.6 million users during the last year alone, the cannabis market is currently the single biggest illegal drug market in terms of number of consumers and has an estimated revenue of approximately £2 billion. For adults, cannabis represented the highest number of all types of drug use for the year ending March 2020, and approximately one-third of individuals who use cannabis were frequent users of the drug. For 16 to 24-year-olds, cannabis was the most common drug used, with 18.7% having reported that they had used the drug in the last year. Drug use also varied by household income, with those with a total household income less than £10,400, 13.2%, more likely to have used cannabis than people in the higher income households. Cannabis also was the most commonly seized drug by police services in the year ending March 2020, representing 74% of all drug seizures and amounting to about 125,000 seizures. There were approximately 40,000 convictions at all counts for all drug offences, not only cannabis. In 2019, 63% of convictions for drug offences were for white offenders, 20% for black offenders and 10% for Asian offenders. We know that poorer communities are more likely to experience stop and search. Most stop and searches are made on suspicion of drugs, and that the majority of stop and searches in London were of people aged 15 to 24 years in the year ending January 2021. Black and Asian people were amongst the most likely to be living in the most deprived 10% of neighbourhoods in 2019. The Commission believes that there is a double disadvantage for young people living in more deprived areas, where greater police presence leads to them being stopped, searched, and consequently prosecuted for possession of Class B drugs. Once they've entered the criminal justice system, these young people, and specifically young ethnic minority men, are more likely to then re-enter the criminal justice system than their white counterparts. This then has a disproportionate impact on their ability to progress in life, and can often be the gateway into a cycle of re-entry into the criminal justice system, hampering education and employment prospects. The question to be posed here is, what is the best response to drug possession that will achieve society's objectives to punish, rehabilitate and correct behaviours? Drug possession, regardless of whether Class A or Class B, is a crime, and anyone who chooses to engage with illegal drugs must contend with the repercussions of their decisions. However, we question the extent to which these repercussions must fall within the criminal justice system. The Commission believes there is a case for treating low-level Class B drug possession for personal use only through alternative pathways outside of the criminal justice system. This would enable the police to direct greater efforts and resources towards hard drugs and the violent crime with which it is associated, whilst also preventing harm through adopting public health interventions. By focusing on possession of Class B drugs for personal use, the Commission believes it is making practical and achievable proposals that could help staunch the flow of young people into more serious crime. The use of Class B drugs is widespread across the population of the UK, but the majority of those who use them are aged under 30, and there is some evidence that young people with heavy cannabis use have been pulled into county lines operations to pay off debts. The Commission welcomes the Government's recent announcement of a £148 million investment into tackling the issue of drugs, which will provide additional resources for law enforcement to tackle the supply of drugs and dismantle organised gangs. It will also deliver more money to drug treatment and recovery to help cut drug-related crime and disrupt the cycle of misuse and reoffending. Part of this investment includes the introduction of the pilot project ADDA, Addiction, Diversion, Disruption, Enforcement and Recovery. This new intensive approach to tackling drug misuse combines targeted and tougher policing with enhanced treatment and recovery services. The pilot will run in 5 areas across the UK with some of the highest rates of drug misuse: Blackpool, Hastings, Middlesbrough, Norwich and Swansea Bay. We note that the ethnic minority populations of the identified locations are small, particularly in Blackpool and Swansea, and that the project will presumably tackle all classes of drugs. But there is another troubling area that it may not address. This is the disproportionate criminalisation of young people, often from ethnic minority and deprived backgrounds, through their personal use of cannabis and other soft drugs. The Commission does not endorse the legalisation of Class B drugs. They have a detrimental impact on an individual's physical and mental well-being, with research showing links between frequent use of cannabis and risk of developing psychosis disorders. For young people under 18 years old, there have been links between cannabis consumption and risks of developing depression and suicidal behaviour later in life. In the year ending March 2020, admissions for drug-related mental and behavioural disorders, and for poisoning by drug misuse, were highest for younger people, peaking between the ages of 25 and 34. And cannabis accounted for 3/4 of all patients in drug treatment in 2015 to 2016. It is also established that regular use can predispose people to later Class A drug use by in some way opening a gateway. The tragic effects of drug abuse can also be seen downstream in the criminal justice system. Between 2008 and 2016, there were 88 drug-related deaths in prison custody, of which 12 were counted with the definition of suicide as they were classified as self-poisoning, either intentional or undetermined intent. In 2017, there were 60 self-inflicted deaths amongst white prisoners, at a rate of 0.96 per 1,000 prisoners, compared with a rate of 0.09 for black prisoners, 2 self-inflicted deaths. In the same year, there were 621 self-harm incidents involving white prisoners per 1,000, compared to 100 for black prisoners. But health-orientated out-of-court disposals, OOCDs, can potentially address substance abuse before it becomes addictive, and may prevent criminal offenders from drifting into more serious criminal behaviours. They can also spare young people a criminal record, and the resulting blight on future opportunities for education or employment, for what could be a one-time indiscretion or phase in a thralls of youth. A review prepared for the Commission found no strong evidence to suggest that reducing punishments for drug possession increases drug use. They found that many alternative measures to decriminalisation have reduced arrests and convictions for low-level drug offences. This is exemplified in the Thames Valley Police Drug Diversion Programme, which, quote, provides individuals with an opportunity to avoid the stigma of receiving a criminal record, whilst at the same time offering incentives to attend drug diversion programmes and treatment. End quote. Case study: Thames Valley Police Drug Diversion Programme. Thames Valley Police, TVP, implemented a pilot study on the West Berkshire Local Policing Area, LPA, which utilised a diversion to drug service provider scheme in lieu of traditional crime justice pathways. The pilot utilised a community resolution outcome for those found in possession of illegal drugs. This involved non-enforceable referral to a drug service provider. The intervention involved an assessment followed by 3 face-to-face intervention sessions with a member of the drug service provider. A paper outlining the impact of the West Berkshire drugs diversion pilot between 10th of December 2017 and 13th of January 2019 found that 62% of the referrals came as a result of an officer-initiated stop check, and contact was made with all those referred. The majority of referrals, 76%, were for possession of cannabis. The evaluation found that 84% of those who were sent for treatment would have received a sanction that would not have addressed the reasons for their drug use had they not been referred to the programme. There was a proven reoffending rate of 8.7% for adults in the pilot cohort when compared with a national proven reoffending rate of 25.7%. Quote, I did the drug diversion sessions when I was stopped by the police in the wrong place at the wrong time with a joint of cannabis on me. But I actually found the sessions to be really useful, and I learnt a lot from them. I think it's really important that Thames Valley Police offer this so that we don't just get a criminal record. End quote. Male, 17, completed the drug diversion programme in October-November 2020. Case study: West Midlands Police Pre-Arrest Drug Diversion. Announced in October 2020, the process for pre-arrest drug diversion in West Midlands Police involves applying a community resolution. This is a non-statutory out-of-court disposal, OOCD, for officers to utilise. Community resolutions do not lead to a criminal record. This diversion is for simple possession of controlled drug offences only, and any possession with intent to supply offences are excluded from this scheme. The annual cost of drug misuse to the West Midlands Police area is around £1.4 billion. 1 in 5 crimes reported to West Midlands Police are believed to be drug-related, with around 50% of burglaries, theft, shoplifting and robbery committed by Class A drug users. The purpose of this pilot is to adapt a public health approach to the use of controlled drugs. Monitoring and evaluation of the project is ongoing. However, in the first 3 months of the PCC Commission scheme, West Midlands Police made 527 referrals onto the scheme, with 270 of those being assessed and 127 people attending the intervention so far. The vast majority of these referrals are for people under the age of 30, and almost 90% of individuals stated cannabis as their drug of choice. 34% of people with known ethnicity assessed for the programme so far are white British. 23% are Pakistani, the 2 largest groups. Currently, to be eligible for an OOCD, the offender must admit guilt and agree to the disposal. The Commission has heard views that people from ethnic minorities, and specifically black men, are less likely to receive a diversionary option, such as an OOCD, as the requirement to admit guilt acts as a potential barrier to be diverted. This is reflected in the youth justice estate. Between 2017 and 2019, Black, Asian and mixed ethnicity children were substantially less likely than white children to receive an out-of-court disposal. The Lamy Review also points to this barrier in the context of custodial sentences, where ethnic minority defendants were consistently more likely than white defendants to plead not guilty in court. At the heart of this remains the question of trust, and we urge police services, criminal justice agencies, and ethnic minority communities to work together to understand and address this reluctance to admit guilt. For example, a multi-agency National Youth Justice Board project was launched in 2020, seeking to understand the disproportionality of the OOCD system, specifically in relation to community resolutions. The Commission considers that the findings from this work will help to inform the approach for a diversion route that mitigates against the risks of disproportionality in the update of diversionary routes. We consider examples, such as the Thames Valley and the West Midlands Police drug diversion pilot models, as effective and proportionate means through which young people may appropriately be diverted from addiction and crime, whilst also trying to address the root cause of their personal drug use. It's about implementing fair practices in policing that will provide improved outcomes for these young people and their wider communities. Recommendation 12. Promote fairness, prevent harm, reduce crime and divert young people away from the criminal justice system. The Commission therefore recommends a multi-agency approach, bringing together the College of Policing, National Police Chiefs Council, Home Office and Ministry of Justice, to develop an evidence-based pilot to divert offences of low-level Class B drug possession into public health services. It is suggested that the pilot is trialled in 4 of the 6 police force areas where almost half, 48%, of all arrests for drug offences took place in the year ending March 2020. The Metropolitan Police, Merseyside, West Yorkshire and Humberside, noting that Thames Valley and the West Midlands are already undertaking police drug diversion pilots. The aim is that following the evaluation of the pilot by the College of Policing, a consistent approach is adopted nationally. Under this diversion scheme, individuals committing the offence of possession of a Class B drug will automatically be considered for a drugs referral in lieu of traditional crime justice routes. In accordance with current OOCD guidance, individuals committing the offence must admit guilt to be eligible for this referral mechanism. The Commission also notes that information about those referred into this programme should not be disclosed to potential employers, education providers, or voluntary sector organisations, in order to preserve opportunities for young people, once they've completed their course, to pursue further higher education or employment without being held back by a criminal record. The responsibility for developing operational guidance for the new drug diversion approach should sit with the COP, working alongside the MPCC, Home Office and MOJ, and drawing from the evidence of what has worked from models such as the Thames Valley Police pilot approach. The implementation of this recommendation will go further to ensure the treatment of all those in possession of illegal substances across the communities and prevent the mass criminalisation of young people found in possession of small quantities of Class B drugs. The Crown Prosecution Service has indicated support for such an approach. Quote, "The Crown Prosecution Service recognises the importance of using a range of interventions to tackle the disproportionate impact the criminal justice system can have on young people, and we are very interested in the outcomes of this project." End quote. Jerry Wareham, National Youth Justice Lead, Crown Prosecution Service. How to achieve a more diverse police service. A key element in building trust with communities is fostering the belief amongst all groups that policing is a respected career, that the police service is theirs, and over time can come to look more like the communities it is policing. Respondents to the Commission's call for evidence echoed this sentiment. Many said that by having a more diverse workforce, police services would be able to build better relationships and trust with the communities they work with. Some progress has been made in recent years, as we registered above, but relative to the big strides that minorities have made into the professions elsewhere, noted in the employment chapter, policing remains a cold spot, especially at the higher levels. No police services are fully ethnically representative of the population they serve, with the exception of Lincolnshire, where the workforce was 2.3% ethnic minority, excluding white minorities, in 2020, compared with a population that was 2.4% ethnic minority. Figure 16. Percentage of police officers from ethnic minorities and percentage of the overall population from ethnic minorities at 2011 census by police force area, England and Wales, 31st of March 2020. Audio description of chart. The chart has a vertical and a horizontal axis. The horizontal axis is percentage of ethnic minority population. The vertical axis, percentage ethnic minority police officers. A line bisects the graph and is marked equal representation. Only the Lincolnshire police force is marked on this line. No police forces are marked above this line. The Metropolitan Police are shown as being the furthest from the equal representation line. End of audio description. Note: based on full-time equivalent police officers. In England and Wales as a whole, 3.1% of police officers were Asian, compared with 6.8% of the population. 1.3% of police officers were black, compared with 3.3% of the population. 92.7% of officers were white, compared with an 86% of the population. The mixed ethnic group was representative, making up 2.2% of police officers and 2.2% of the population. In the year ending March 2020, 2,756 police officers were promoted. This includes 2,558 white officers, 57 Asian officers, 52 officers from mixed ethnic groups, 12 black officers, and 10 officers from other, including Chinese, ethnic groups. However, the Commission was concerned to note that the data does not include the Metropolitan Police, which is the largest and most ethnically diverse service in England and Wales. Consequently, this may alter the number of promotions significantly. Based on this data and noting the omission of the Metropolitan Police, it showed that only white officers were promoted to the highest rank of Chief Officer, which includes Assistant Chief Constables, Deputy Chief Constables, and Chief Constables. A total of 25 promotions to this rank were made. At a Chief Superintendent rank, there were 58 promotions in total, of which there was one promotion of an officer in each of the mixed, Asian, and other ethnic groups, and no promotions of black officers where ethnicity was known. The Commission recognises that this may be explained by the lack of diverse candidates in the pipeline for senior positions. But creating that pipeline is an operational imperative. It makes it easier to gather intelligence and evidence from those who might be unwilling to come forwards otherwise, to bring people to court, to protect people, and to be able to respond to incidents with more sensitivity and understanding. We do not believe that a white police officer is unable to police areas with large ethnic minority communities, or show empathy and understanding with people from minority groups. But a more diverse police service overall could help to rebuild trust with communities at the local level. Understand barriers to recruitment. Culture of policing. The challenge of community perceptions. The Commission heard evidence that people from ethnic minority backgrounds are often put off joining the police by the doubts, criticism, and fears of friends or family, that even some having a sense that they are betraying their community and joining the other side. On closer inspection of this evidence, what was also revealed was the shocking racial abuse that ethnic minority police officers can be subjected to by other ethnic minority citizens in the communities they serve. Social media platforms highlighted disturbing comments, which will not be repeated here. Printable examples already publicly commented on include the following from one such citizen. Quote, "You respect black police officers? Really? Are you guys even black, talking like that, or do you hear yourselves, eh? Ain't no black man got any place working for the police. You guys ain't serious, man." End quote. And the following from political and race relations activist Lee Jasper. Quote, "You're white or some kind of wretched ass-kicking Uncle Tom. You call out my racism instead of the Met." End quote. A black female police officer described how she actively avoided working at the BLM protests last year. Quote, "I've spoken to numerous colleagues of different ethnic backgrounds. Some have been heckled and had racist abuse thrown at them. Others have been asked, 'Why are you standing there when you should be with us?' As a black person in uniform, you can be betrayed as a traitor. But that's not what it's about. I don't want to be a part of people hurling abuse. This movement, should be about education and better representation, and sometimes you have to be the change you want to see yourself." End quote. It is notable that little is said in public discourse about this particular barrier to diverse recruitment. Yet in the Commission's view, it is a pertinent and contributing factor towards the reluctance of ethnic minorities, particularly of Caribbean or African heritage, to apply to join the police service. It also sits at odds with the claims that are made by representatives of ethnic minority communities, including public figures, who demand greater representation in the workforce and at senior levels. Underrepresented communities cannot reasonably expect to call for change but then fail to call out those who treat individuals taking that crucial step forwards in this appalling way. The Commission encourages communities to support and promote the aspirations of those from diverse backgrounds who wish to join the police service. To not do so is a retrograde step and will limit the pace of change that we all wish to see. The risks of doing the job. Assaults without injury on police officers have been increasing year on year since the year ending March 2015. In 2017, the Police Federation published data highlighting that, on average, one police officer was assaulted every 4 minutes. In 2018, the Assault on Emergency Workers Offences Act came into law, but despite this, the figures have continued to climb. The latest annual statistics from the Home Office show that over 30,000 assaults took place in the year ending March 2020, the equivalent of 85 police officers every day. The Metropolitan Police recorded the highest instances, followed by West Yorkshire Police, and even with COVID lockdowns in 2020, the Metropolitan Police alone experienced an increase of nearly 40% of assaults on their officers, likely attributable to various protests, demonstrations, and breaches of the law that took place in London. These assaults included spitting and coughing on officers. The rise in assaults has unsurprisingly had a great impact on police officers, both physically and mentally. This, in turn, has led to a loss of policing days, as those affected need time off to recuperate. But perhaps most disturbingly, these assaults have led to a new trend by perpetrators, who are shown to be from all race and ethnic backgrounds, to film the attacks and then post them online. Invariably, this indicates that assaults are not happening on a one-to-one basis, rather it suggests that groups of perpetrators are involved. Commentating on media reports highlighting the issue last year, Ken Marsh, chair of the Metropolitan Police Federation, stated that police officers had become society's punching bag. This is wholly unacceptable, and has rightly been condemned on all sides. That said, this troubling issue appears to remain live, and also has a chilling effect on those individuals who are considering a career in the police service. Again, members of communities need to reflect on the role they play in affecting the change in policing that they wish to see. The need to maintain progress on organisational change. While the Commission has found no available data on changes of racism in the police workforce, views shared during engagement with frontline officers highlighted a need for cultural change within the police service. Quote, "There is a culture of making everyone the same when you come into policing, as opposed to utilising and listening to the different skills they have. It would be a good cultural change to move forward on to embrace cultural differences." End quote. Anonymous frontline police officer. The National Sikh Police Association submitted evidence to the Commission from a survey carried out in August 2020 on racial disparities in the UK police force, which found that the people who participated, almost half, 47%, had considered leaving their career due to their treatment. The majority, 62%, of people reported suffering from some form of racism at work, and 59% felt they'd been overlooked for opportunities, some or most of the time due to racism or unconscious bias. However, as outlined earlier in the chapter, the Commission has also heard overwhelming views that there has been a dynamic shift in police attitudes on race over the last few decades. Issues of cultural change and commitment to fostering a fair police service were emphasised by all senior officers that the Commission engaged with. Yet how the police are perceived can be shaped by a small minority whose prejudiced behaviour attracts media attention. The Commission notes that while senior officers may appropriately sanction or act on such behaviour, these examples not only impact public perception of the police, but also the likelihood individuals would choose to pursue a career within policing. Internal police misconduct procedures. Another aspect of the internal culture of policing relates to complaints and misconduct. As outlined in the employment chapter, this is an issue that appears to be pertinent across different sectors. In 2019, the MPCC conducted its own research into disproportionality in police complaints and misconduct cases against ethnic minority officers and staff. It found that there were significant differences between white and ethnic minority officers in the amount of internal conduct allegations received and the severity assessments made by professional standards departments, PSDs. Findings in the MPCC report reveal that, quote, some BAME officers have been disproportionately subjected to misconduct investigation by PSD, when the matter should have been dealt with by their supervision at the earliest opportunity, thus preventing an unnecessary lengthy investigation period which subsequently has a significant impact on the BAME officer's health, reputation, career progression, family and community of that BAME officer. End quote. The MPCC research found that PSDs do not have a consistent approach to misconduct cases, and that a lack of supervision and leadership within police forces contributed to creating disparities in misconduct cases and outcomes. It noted that the journey of ethnic minority officers, when facing conduct allegations, often involves being referred to the Professional Standards Department, PSD, by their supervisor for low-level allegations, which would ordinarily be dealt with by that supervisor at an earlier opportunity. Quote, this is either out of fear of being called racist, or not having the knowledge to deal with the matters raised appropriately. The internal structure within the service is feeding the levels of disparity due to the fear of reprisals or being labelled. Inadvertently, the avoidance of dealing with low-level matters at the earliest opportunity is magnifying those levels of distrust and resulting in the exact consequences those supervisors are seeking to avoid. End quote. The Commission supports ongoing work by the MPCC to further address the existing disparities, including work to enhance diversity in the PSD workforce representation, the implementation of reforms that compel PSD decision-makers to discharge matters of low-level conduct to local line managers, and the bar being raised for both investigation of a disciplinary investigation in order to focus the system on the most serious of cases. Achieve meaningful and sustainable diversity in policing. A diverse workforce that is equipped with the necessary skills to work effectively with the communities it serves is dependent on a welcoming, inclusive culture where all of its members are comfortable and confident. Culture changes require a sustained effort, and increasing representation alone is not enough to achieve this, although they are linked. The focus in this area needs to be rooted in fairness, openness, and respect for all groups. The Commission believes that evidence-based initiatives that encourage personal development are key, from mentorship and support for junior members of staff to improved complaint mechanisms. Every police officer should be comfortable to be themselves and given the same opportunities to succeed as their peers. There is merit in utilising former police officers and current police staff associations or networks to support and encourage both personal development within the force and recruitment efforts to reach underrepresented communities. Though, as outlined in the Employment and Enterprise chapter, it cannot be assumed that someone's ethnic background will necessarily change a culture. A concerted effort is also required to ensure that management can be involved in both the championing and development of ethnic minority officers within the force and harnessing a culture of fairness across the police service. The College of Policing, MPCC and APCC, recognise that reaching the milestone of a workforce that mirrors the local community they serve may not always be a meaningful measure. For many local services, achieving meaningful diversity, which includes addressing the skills gap, will require going beyond just being representative of the ethnic minority population of the area. The Commission heard evidence from a number of key organisations in the policing community, who were keen to see Section 159 of the Equality Act 2010, preventing positive discrimination in recruitment, suspended to enable police forces to recruit specially to improve ethnic diversity in the workforce. The idea of the law being used as a means of ensuring such diversity is a compelling one. However, it is not without significant consequences to wider society. Following the Patten Report, the Police Service Northern Ireland (PSNI) became perhaps one of the most well-known examples of how legislation has been used as a means of addressing a similar faith-based challenge to achieve proportionate representation. As such, the Commission undertook a deep dive with them to learn about how they were able to do this. PSNI implemented a 50-50 recruitment policy to make the police service representative of the predominant faiths in their community. Following the implementation of the policy and increase in numbers of Catholic officers in the service, levels of confidence in the local police were similar between both Protestant and Catholic communities in 2017-18. However, the Commission have also heard evidence from police officers and citizens that although the legislation had positive outcomes for Catholic and Protestant communities, as their wider communities became more diverse over this time, the same success was not replicated for minority groups. This suggests that legislation may not be the best way to address the issue. Indeed, the Commission found strong evidence of where and how effective work has already been undertaken by some police services and partners they work with across the country to dispel negative perceptions, promote fairness, and improve equality, even in the most challenging of circumstances. The Commission commends as a model Nottinghamshire Police, which has recruited a higher proportion of officers from ethnic minority backgrounds than any other force in England and Wales. They achieved this through a campaign of engagement with different parts of the community, not just those of different faiths and ethnicities, but also across the local public sector, to raise awareness of the opportunity to apply. Case Study: Nottinghamshire Police Recruitment Approach. In 2012, Nottinghamshire's PCC set a long-term ambition to improve ethnic minority experiences of policing and the recruitment, retention and progression of both ethnic minority officers and staff. This is also a strategic priority for the Chief Constable. Nottinghamshire's recruitment approach includes citizens in policing, dealing with youth engagement including mini-police, cadets, youth outreach, schools intervention officers, force careers advisor, and HR force positive action strategy, and learning and development that includes core and crime student training. Even during the COVID-19 crisis, Nottinghamshire's police continued to engage potential applicants through a webinar series, allowing future officers to record fitness tests on video from home during lockdown, and social distancing officers in school classrooms to ensure education can go ahead. Prior to Operation Uplift, Nottinghamshire's police had an ethnic minority officer representational figure of 3.8%. As of December 2020, this figure stood at 7%, representing huge organisational change, and the most representative force within the country of any with a significant ethnic minority population of over 10%. In Nottinghamshire Police, each new cohort is averaging 25% ethnic minority recruits and 45% female, average cohort 24 officers. The force moved from under 4% ethnic minority to 7.01% within 16 months, total officers workforce, and retention remains high with uplift years 1 and 2 already achieved. Nottinghamshire is 63% representative of the diverse communities it serves, and has an ambition to achieve 11.18% as per the census. Police Now, an independent social enterprise, is an example of a successful national scheme that is helping to improve diversity and retention across several police services in England and Wales. Case study: Police Now. Police Now runs 2-year graduate schemes that recruits and trains outstanding graduates to be placed as neighbourhood police officers and trainee detectives across England and Wales. Police Now has partnered with over 33 forces in England and Wales, using their recruitment and training programmes to supply police forces with graduates. The programme includes a residential training academy, 2 years of in-force training, and continuous professional and personal development with an assigned Police Now leadership development officer. Police Now focus on attracting individuals who have not previously considered a policing career. To attract these individuals, the marketing focuses on community transformation and the leadership skills a policing career can provide. In 2020, Police Now attracted over 18,374 applicants, and to date, Police Now has recruited over 1,800 police officers across England and Wales. Police Now also uses positive action initiatives in order to target and support underrepresented groups within policing. Police Now's recruitment trends suggest that the graduate market has the potential to help address the underrepresentation of officers who are women and those from an ethnic minority heritage. In 2020, 17% of participants on the National Graduate Leadership Programme identified as from a Black, Asian, or minority ethnic background, 54% identified as women, and 7% identified as women from a Black, Asian, or minority ethnic background, with 35 unique languages spoken across the cohort. Of those who started the National Detective Programme in 2021, 24% identify as from a Black, Asian, or minority ethnic background, 66% identify as women, and 16% identify as women from a Black, Asian, or minority ethnic background, with 29 unique languages spoken across the cohort. Analysis indicates that there has been an increase in young people's confidence in the police in the communities where Police Now participants have been deployed. Independently peer-reviewed analysis suggests that the targeted problem-solving work of Police Now participants, alongside their colleagues, is translating into green shoots of impact in relation to antisocial behaviour. This analysis shows a 11.7% reduction in antisocial behaviour in the communities where Police Now participants were posted, and a 7.2% reduction in communities without a Police Now participant. The work of Police Now participants and their colleagues aligns closely with the traditional aims of neighbourhood policing, namely for the police to work in partnership with the local community to solve problems and to prevent crime. Additionally, previous analysis comparing locations with a Police Now participant found significant improvements in young people's, 16 to 24-year-olds, confidence in police, up by 17%, exceeding improvements in comparison communities, up by 3% over the same period. Another measure that seems to have had a positive impact is a locals-only recruitment policy. In 2014, as Mayor of London, Boris Johnson announced a residence-based approach for recruitment to the Metropolitan Police, which would see Londoners only fill the ranks of new police constables. The policy meant only those who had lived in London for 3 of the previous 6 years would be eligible to apply at entry level. After just 1 year, the new approach doubled the number of ethnic minority recruits to 26% of the total service, and female recruits increased from a quarter to a third. At the time, the Metropolitan Police described how a high rate of interest had also been matched by a high quality of candidates, with 40% of those expressing interest at the time having a first degree or higher qualification, for example. Despite these encouraging examples, progress remains frustratingly slow. The Commission's view is that the gap in achieving the right workforce mix has been driven by a lack of consistent political and policing leadership focus on these issues over the past 40 years. Strong measures are required to maintain a consistent focus on the workforce mix, and make a significant change quickly. Operation Uplift, which will see the unprecedented push to recruit 20,000 additional police officers across England and Wales over a 3-year period, provides a unique opportunity to drive that change. We also consider that a focus solely on achieving a high ethnic minority presence in police services will not solve the problem in a sustainable way if the new recruits do not have the competence and the life skills needed to appropriately work and engage with the community they serve. The Commission emphasises a need for a recruitment approach that includes recognition of the life skills that candidates can offer, such as a working knowledge of local issues, familiarity with the community languages in the areas covered, and an understanding of different religious and cultural sensitivities. As such, the Commission makes 2 recommendations to achieve a more diverse police workforce and promote genuine, positive interaction between communities and the police. Recommendation 21. Achieve inclusivity. Create police workforces that represent the communities they serve. First, introduce a local residency requirement for recruitment to each police force area. The Metropolitan Police recently returned to the residency requirement, outlined previously in this chapter, to help them to achieve their target of 40% ethnic minority representation in the workforce. The Commission recommends that this policy to recruit locally is upscaled across all police force areas in England and Wales, with the College of Policing developing guidance for police services on the implementation of the residency requirements. The Commission notes that the residency requirement will likely drive more significant change in specific services where both the workforces and the populations are larger. For example, in September 2020, the Metropolitan Police employed around 25% of all police officers, full-time equivalent, in England and Wales, and around 15% of the population reside there, based on the 2011 census. This compares to police service areas such as Warwickshire or Difford Powys, where employed less than 1% of all police officers and have around 1% of the population of England and Wales living there. Therefore, the guidance produced by the College will need to take into consideration the different nuances of each police service area, including circumstances where the prospective local candidates eligible to apply for a role in policing is reduced, for example due to the age demographic of the area's population. The Commission also suggests that police services address the pipeline of candidates applying for policing through extensive engagement and outreach with communities, for example through cadet programs. Due consideration should also be given to incentivise new recruits to remain with their police service for a minimum period of time to establish their careers. The progress and efficacy of the residency requirements should be monitored and evaluated at a national level by the Home Office, working in partnership with the COP, APCC and MPCC. There is also a need for reporting mechanisms to be incorporated within this process, with HMI CFRS inspecting services on their progress in regular periods. Recommendation 22. Achieve inclusivity. Equip the police service with skills to serve the needs of their communities. Second, the Commission recommends that the College of Policing, COP, work with police services to develop and evaluate recruitment pilots that match candidates' life skills with the needs of the communities they serve in their local areas. By September 2021, the COP working alongside services should identify a lead for the project and outline timelines for the progression of these pilots. Following the evaluation of the pilot, the COP should then introduce evidence-based guidance for police services about how to include questions about life skills and local understanding into the post-assessment centre recruitment process. This guidance should include the introduction of questions into the bank of post-assessment centre questions for each police force to adapt to local circumstances. In an instance where, based on the evaluation results, the COP is not able to progress with this recommendation, the College will be required to write to the Home Secretary and to the Home Office to outline the reasons why the pilots cannot be upscaled.